Aikwe, Nagnamalita, and this is my channel, The Midnight Librarian. Today I will be talking about my review of Aiden Thomas's Lost in the Neverwoods. This is my first Aiden Thomas book that I've read so far. I am still eager to get to Cemetery Boys, but had picked this up for a Tarot Readathon. I talk about it briefly in my Tarot Readathon vlog, which I don't know if it will be up yet. I'm hoping to get it up soon, but if you don't want to search through that content, this is why I am making a review of it. Also, I just found that I have a lot to say about this. So here we go. So Lost in the Neverwoods is a Peter Pan retelling set in modern day Astoria, Oregon, which is along the cusp of the Columbia River, right next to the Washington border. We're following Wendy. She is just turning 18 years old. It is the summer before she goes to Oregon State University. When she was 12, Wendy and her brothers were lost in the woods behind their house. These woods are vast and huge, and they were lost for 6 months. After the span of time, Wendy was found, but her brothers were not. But Wendy doesn't remember what happened within that span of time and is constantly feeling guilty about that it's her fault that her brothers are lost, because she's the older sibling, and if she only knew what happened, she knew she would find them somehow. So this 18th birthday, it's not her best. She just wants to go home. She takes the back roads in the woods to get to her house, and something ends up falling onto her car. When she looks in the rearview mirror, she sees a body. This body is very representative of what she thought Peter Pan would look like, a fairy tale boy that her mother had told her and her brothers about often, that Wendy soon took the mantle of and told to her brothers. Except this boy looks older than what she expected, and she doesn't believe that it's actually Peter Pan, because Peter Pan is a fairy tale. However, when he comes to, he very much knows her and calls out her name and says that he needs her help to locate the children that have gone missing the last couple of days. Wendy has a hard time believing it's Peter Pan, but has a feeling that he's the key to unlock what happened to her brothers. I am not the biggest fan of Peter Pan as a story, or in terms of the adaptations of the original story by J.M. Barrie. I first of all find, of course, that the stereotypes that they portray of Indigenous people is really harmful, and the fact that it's been put in with a story that includes pixies and mermaids tends to help further the stigma that Native people are myths and have these mystical power type things, and or aren't real. So that I have a very big problem with. I also find that Peter Pan as the Disney movie was one of the restricted movies that my mom wouldn't allow us to watch until a certain age because of its harmful stigma. The same with Pocahontas. And then when it comes to retellings, I tend to get a little iffy when it comes to retellings, because when it comes to retellings, and this is just my opinion, please do not take my opinion as a token voice for Native people. We are all individuals, and some may disagree with me. In my opinion, I would like to see modern retellings of Peter Pan still have Indigenous peoples incorporated without putting us in the same category as pixies and mermaids. I feel like it's a missed opportunity that some of them don't, and so far some of the ones that I have read do not, which I feel also helps the erasure of Native peoples. That is my overall viewpoint of Peter Pan. I also have a hard time connecting with Wendy as a character. I find her very naive, occasionally pushy, and otherwise very overbearing and whiny. I just overall have a hard time with her as a character. Peter Pan I actually enjoyed as a child, of course, because he was very confident, very fun, and overall I felt like knew how to have a good time. Now as an adult, I find him very childish, very bullheaded, and when it comes to getting certain things done, he is too busy trying to have fun than actually getting the important task done. So that I tend to find fairly frustrating. So Aidan Thomas's retelling of Peter Pan does not include Indigenous people, which I feel is a missed opportunity. However, it's set in Astoria, Oregon. I tend to feel, for some reason, fairly protective of Oregon, despite not living in that state. I don't know why. I've criticized other authors for not so much misrepresenting, but getting frustrated that I couldn't figure out where exactly they were in Oregon or whatever. I have been to Oregon a fair amount. I'm not a local. I don't know. I don't know why I feel so protective of my northern neighbors. It just happens, I guess. But this is set in Astoria, Oregon. I found that with the setting, I could easily imagine this small town where everyone knows everyone's business. A small town myself. And then easily being able to imagine the dark woods that Wendy and her brothers get lost in. Wendy as a character is still frustrating to me. I did have a hard time connecting with her still within this book. I did, however, was able to connect with her on one level in terms of grief and loss when it came to her brothers. When it comes to sibling relationships, I tend to be more sentimental towards it. Being an older sibling myself to two brothers and a sister. So when it comes to the sibling dynamics, it's something that I tend to very much pay attention to, and is something that I feel I'm very emotional towards, having lost a brother myself. I very much connected with Wendy on that part, but I can't say that anything else I really did. Once again, I find her very naive within this story and frustrating at times. I didn't quite understand why she made the decisions that she did. I understood them, but I still didn't agree with them. Peter Pan as a character, once again, found him very childish and wasn't too thrilled with him. However, his role in this book was fairly interesting. That I really appreciated because it was an interesting twist I hadn't heard before, and I very much liked it. The villain in this book very much reminded me, and I said this in my vlog, that for some reason when you find out who the villain is, it to me very much felt like Rise of the Guardians, because he very much reminded me of Pitch Black or the boogeyman from Rise of the Guardians. I think of the dialogue just felt very much Pitch Black. I almost anticipated that Peter Pan would fight back with fun, much like Jack Frost had. That's just something that I happened to think about consistently throughout this book when the villain came to be. I also felt like it very much leaned on the creepier side, which I enjoyed, but it isn't marked as a subgenre of horror at all, and I almost wish it would be. I feel like it could have been pushed further into that. The way the villain is described is a little creepy. It was leaning towards the creepy horror aspect, and I almost wish it would have leaned heavily more into that. I feel like I would have been more entertained by that aspect. Otherwise, the story as a whole, I felt like it was fine. It was interesting enough. I got through it. I didn't feel like I was going to DNF it at all, despite not being as connected to Wendy or Peter that I wanted to be. I wish that Wendy had more growth, really. I know that she kind of does, and I understand that this guilt that she's had for the last 5 years is something, this grief and loss and guilt she has over losing her brothers is definitely something that she definitely has to work towards. I did appreciate that at the end she was seeing a psychologist for this as well as her confidence, because she is very meek in a way throughout the whole book, and that's one thing that I wish she kind of had more growth towards. She did towards the end, but it was still just it felt like it took a little longer than I had wanted. But otherwise, the story itself had an interesting twist had interesting twists and concepts that I did really appreciate. I also just like the fact that despite not having been to Astoria, Oregon, was something that I, for some reason, felt like I could easily picture in my head. But ultimately, I gave this book 3.5 stars. I do hope to eventually read more Peter Pan retellings. I've heard good things about Aidan Thomas, particularly when it came to Cemetery Boys. I have yet to read that. I still very much hope to do so. That was one of the only reasons why I decided to even get into this book, because of Aidan Thomas's reputation. Otherwise, I, as much as I say that I hope to get more into Peter Pan retellings, I hesitate to do so just because Everland was just so bad. Yeah. So it's hard to convince myself to do so when characters tend to remain the same to the original story. Wendy having the same characteristics that I have a problem with, as well as Peter Pan. So that's my overall thoughts on that subject. If you have any particular Peter Pan retelling that you enjoyed, and you think I would like, be sure to leave it in the comments down below. I'd be interested to see them. I am aware of Darling by K. Ankrum. We'll see if I get to that. I've been looking to see if my library has a copy, so I'm not sure about purchasing it just yet. Have any thoughts on that? Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, if you've read Lost in the Neverwoods, I love to hear your thoughts on those as well. Please, no spoilers, down in the comments down below. If you've made it this far, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. If you have yet already to do so, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the little bell icon to get notified when I post more content. Also, be sure to check out my Raise Awareness links down in the description down below, and I hope that you were in the mental mindset to enjoy your reading, and I will see you in a video again very soon. Chew!